allegiances that people have to different leaders, and that if there is conflict between the leaders, then the allegiances that the team members would have will be for the leaders. It's a difficult task, and it's one of the issues that you really have to think about when you're putting teams together that might be cross-functional teams, for example. Where do the team members hold their allegiance to what leader? And are they willing to work together to move beyond the allegiance that they have? It's a very difficult question, and I call it politics for participation, and it's one thing that we really have to pay attention to if we're trying to make teams work.
Next question comes from Coahuila, from Ibero-American University in Mexico. Good morning. The traditional enterprises encourage incentives and depending on the individual performance of the members. But in teamwork, what kind of encouragement and incentives are the most adequate in order to prevent rivalry from happening and taking place?
I think the issue is whether or not rewards are distributed amongst the team equitably as seen by the team. In many instances, you might find teams working together that have discussed how rewards will be shared. Unfortunately, there are also organizations that put teams together and reward individually. And what you find, or what we find as a result of it, is that the team is relegated to the second position versus the individual as being primary. And it often causes a great deal of conflict.
And now from Medellin, Colombia. This is from EAFIT Medellin, Colombia. Good afternoon. The question is, when the group has been formed at random, what do you recommend for it to become a real team? And what has been your experience in organizations that have gone through that process?
Again, that's usually the kind of teams that are put together are those that are people are directed into the team. Very few people have an opportunity of really selecting team members. Organizations also. What I found is that the first thing that a team leader should do, if he or she has the opportunity, is to assess the abilities of each of the members that are on the team. That is, what can they do? What administrative skills do they have? What resources do they have available to them to contribute to the group? What kind of skills do they bring in terms of communication, or can they give feedback? Essentially, an assessment of each individual first to see how they can become a team and what they can do and what are their strengths and weaknesses. I think that's essential for team leaders to do with new members coming on board.
And now we're going to Reforma, Tabasco, Mexico. Good morning. Our question here is, how does default in giving rewards to the group, how does it affect the group and the firm, the enterprise? And according to, in your experience, what do you suggest for us to improve that? When you don't give what you've promised, what you have, the rewards that you've promised.
Well, the first thing, if you don't give the rewards that you promise, is that you're going to have a very distrusting group. And what about the morale and the productivity of the organization or the team? Those are the things you really have to look at. And how much will people be committed to working as a team member if, in fact, management goes back on the promises that it makes? And I've seen it happen in organizations, and the result is that the team initiative fails.
And now the next question coming from Costa Rica, from the university, State University, Distance University, San Jose. Teamwork is fundamental for the success of an organization, in particularly when you're working on projects, but innovation and changes are generally generated on individual basis or in small groups. How does Dr. Torres explain this contradiction? And I have another question. What kind of faculty or empowerment should be given to the facilitator? And is there a negative influence that the tendency? Well, how can the facilitator cooperate? This was not a clear question. the last part.
Okay, my understanding, first of all, I'll talk about the facilitator part. One is that the facilitator is simply a facilitator and that the group is the group. The group is successful if the group works well. But again, the facilitator is simply helping the group move through the process. And the first part of your question I didn't get clearly. So if you want to ask that again, we can go ahead and get you an answer for that.
Mientras tanto, vamos a ir a la ciudad de Mexicali, en donde nos están formulando la pregunta desde la Universidad Autónoma de Baja California.
Sí, buenos días.
Buenos días. La interferencia. What probability do you have to form a work team, a teamwork or work team when the facilitator doesn't have when the facilitator is working for his own interest and not really paying attention to the goals?
Again, I think the issue around who you select as a facilitator is important. Obviously, a person who has different desires or outcomes for working with the team may not be the appropriate person to really use as a facilitator. I recognize that sometimes we don't have choices around the people that we work with. However, if you do have a choice, and if you do have the ability to select those people that are the best, recognizing the best based on their performance, then I would select the people that you know that are going to do a good job versus those that you know that are more politically motivated.
Escuchamos la siguiente pregunta ahora desde Mérida, Yucatán, del Instituto Tecnológico. Adelante.
La pregunta es del ingeniero Felipe
The
Esquivel.
question is, when you decide to work in teams and you modify the organization of the firm, is it necessary to modify the organization, or can you combine teamwork and the current organization, the current structure of an organization?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely necessary to slowly transition from one concept to the other, from a hierarchical organization to a team organization. Rather than doing it from one day to the next, it's important to try team building. I mean, to try putting teams together and doing team building, and to see how they work and how well they work, and if they do, to continue the process. But I also believe that in most organizations today we have both, as I see them, hierarchy as well as teams, and they work well together.
Well, now we have a question coming from Veracruz, Guadalajara, and this comes from the University Center. Thank you, from Guadalajara. We have a question for Dr. Torres. What strategies, Dr. Torres, can you recommend to us, practical strategies, for a leader to facilitate the maturity of the members of the team and help them grow and develop and bloom?
I think that's an excellent question. I think the responsibility of a leader is to create a climate where people can reach their potential, and that requires trust, commitment, and respect of all people within the group. I think the leader can assess. I mentioned a little earlier about assessing the skill level and knowledge base of people that are part of the team. That if a leader is really a true team leader or a leader of an organization, that what they do is they really develop their people based on the assessment of where they are and where they need to be fully contributing members of the team.
Damos paso a otra participación de la Comisión Federal de Electricidad.
Now another question from Mexico, SECAP, Federal District. Thank you. Given the constant ongoing technological innovations, then organizations want to adapt to that. Do you think that you always have to form in those enterprises? And now about spirituality, how do you handle the sense of belonging?
What I'll do is I'll answer questions going backwards. I think that a sense of belonging is essential for people in any organization if they're committed to working and supporting the organization. In terms of productivity, I think it's essential that people have a sense of belonging to an organization, that they have a sense of belonging to the group that they work with, and that actually the policies that the organization has support that also.
And now, a phone call from the Technological Institute in Saltillo, Mexico. Coahuila. I would like to know if there is a systematic way to determine whether the person belongs, what kind of belonging sense there is amidst the team, and do you have to assign the tasks and responsibilities?
I think as a team member or team leader within the group itself, that there are certain accountabilities that the team has to the organization. That is, they have to do the work and they have to have work to show for their work. It is a responsibility of the team leader and team members in a group that's working well to assign responsibility to ensuring that what work has to be done is done by one person or two people or three people or a number of people involved in the final product. I do believe that the team leader has a responsibility to do that, as well as working with team members in order to make that happen.
From Paraguay. We have another question from Paraguay. A question. In every organization there are natural leaders. In order to initiate them as facilitators, what do you think is their pre-requirements or prerequisites? What do you think their background should be to move them on to facilitators, these natural leaders?
I think that the knowledge base of certainly psychology of how to interpret and manage behavior is very important. And again, the knowledge base around team development and teams and all the learning that goes into having to work with people and working with people within the context of groups, as well as understanding the organizational dynamics. So there's three levels: the individual, group, and the organization. And all of these are things that you can learn. And school, the university are probably the best areas to learn those. And then going back in and applying the learnings to the individual, group, and the organization as you work with them.
Now we have another session. Now we're going another question from Panama. Panama.
Sí, lo escuchamos. Adelante con su pregunta.
Oh, we're calling from Veracruz, not from Panama. Okay. Come on.
Sí, lo escuchamos.
Thank you. What experience do you have in implementing spirituality programs, especially in this time of the materialistic time in the world? You know, we're all so into materialism. What experiences do you have in implementing the spirituality in the organizations?
Well, implementing a spirituality program is not something that I do, but the essence of what the Tao speaks about is a universal force, that is the interconnectedness of all things. And I think as the programs that I'm involved in designing show respect to individuals, they ask for people to make commitments not only to the group, but make commitments to themselves for performing as a group member, and really contributing as much as they can based on a balance they have to the group. And without that, what we find is that groups sometimes don't work.
Another question from Mexico, from the National Autonomous University. Thank you. Up until what should the facilitator participate and get involved in the personal life of the group members in order to get them to develop? And how does the Tao contribute to the quality of life at work?
There are a couple of levels, thoughts around how much a facilitator should get involved with team members. If the facilitator is part of the organization and their relationships, then it's almost impossible not to become involved with team members. The other is that another area of thinking is that the facilitator stays detached from the group because the facilitator is the sort of the manager of the group as they go through this process. I've seen it work both ways, but I've also seen it when the facilitator becomes so much a member of the group that he or she loses the objectivity that they really need to be a facilitator. As far as the Tao goes, I think that the issue of working together, working in a balanced way, the mind and the heart are important. That if we can respect each other, and I think that the Tao is, the philosophy is essentially doing unto others as they would do unto you. It's very basic. That if we can do that with each other and respect each other and show concern and kindness to each other as we go through this process, because it's a very difficult process, then we don't avoid things, but we can challenge each other and we can have conflicts, but it won't destroy the team. It moves the team forward. And that's all part of what the Tao is. It's kind of a universal force that moves through everyone and creates balance for the team.
Vamos a regresar ahora a Panamá, a la Universidad Tecnológica.
Now, Panama. Good afternoon, Dr. Torres. As a facilitator, there are differences in personalities amongst the group members. How is it that you have not mentioned empowerment as an essential element for the groups?
Well, I don't use the word empowerment very often because it connotates something that can often be taken away. That is, if we give people power, most organizations have a tendency or a willingness to take it away when they have to. I think that as a result of people working together, they become empowered. I think that self-authorized leadership is an empowerment from an individual perspective outward, that I have to assume responsibility for some of the things that I do in relationship to other members of the team. So that gives people empowerment. And it's the kind that you can't take away. And I think that's the important part, that self-authorized leadership is something that the organization can't take away. It's something that I have as a team member and that I can contribute and can never be taken away.
And now we have another question coming from Mexico Federal District. We want to congratulate Dr. Torres for his wonderful lecture today, and also Dr. Cardenas and his team. Dr. Torres, could you please differentiate a little bit more? You have mentioned energies, Tao, and the spirituality. How would you differentiate these kinds of energies from the physical energies? In what way? Because these physical energies are indeed present and they do oppose themselves, right? How would you differentiate?
Well, first of all, I appreciate your mentioning Dr. Cardenas and the team that they have here. It's wonderful to watch people working together in a collaborative way and presenting a program that actually works on time and everything seems to fit. And it's good from a person that does teamwork to be able to observe this, and I agree with you. They're doing a wonderful job. The second part of the question is... the second part of the question? Can you repeat the second part of the question, please? Oh, okay.
They hung up.
Okay.
Bueno, thank you very much, Dr. Torres. Anyway, I think we have really had a record here of calls. We hope that you have enjoyed this video conference. We will continue transmitting programs on the latest in management techniques and systems and global competitiveness. We remind those of you who have been participating in our 1994-95 series on telecommunications for education and professional development that we have an important date change. The next program of this series that will be transmitted a few days later, it will be transmitted on Wednesday, April 26, and that will be Multimedia Training Strategies, Design and Evaluation. This date change has been made in order to accommodate the many sites which were going to be unable to participate on the originally scheduled date. We also invite you to participate on March 29th in the second video conference of our new series, Strategic Resource Management, entitled Energy Use and Conservation, Efficiency Programs and Technology. A certificate or diploma is also available to participants in all 4 video conferences of this series. For additional information on ITC programs, you may consult your print package where you will find the dates and specific topics of our 3 series. On behalf of all of us who collaborate with the International Training Center, I thank you for your participation and interest in today's program. Thank you very much, and see you soon.